Good morning. It's another beautiful Saturday, and we are back to deliberate on issues of national importance. My name is Abna Tebi, and this is NewDay Saturday Edition. We are running from now till 10 a.m. where we draw the curtains on the show. We're coming to you live from TV3 studios here in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. We're also live on Connect FM 97.1, and we're connecting with our global audience on the internet at 3news.com. So today's issues that we'll be looking at are as follows. I'll take you through quickly and then we'll give some context to it. We're looking at the ratification of the interim EPA, the Interim Economic Partnership Agreement that was ratified by Parliament. We'll also be looking at issues arising from government's attempt to raise or issue a fifth Eurobond. And then we'll also take a look at clock sack strike and whether or not we're going to see an end in sight following some issuance of assurances from the president. We'll also look at the BECA results that have come out recently. We'll weigh in on that subject as well. And lastly, we'll touch on findings of a survey conducted by the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, CDD Ghana, which, among other things, disclosing that 7 out of 10 Ghanaians are or believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. So just to give some context to these outlined topics, we'll run through quickly. On the interim EPA ratification, now we are pretty much saying that at the heart of every country's development is trade. And for trade, you're looking at numbers. Numbers are really important. So shouldn't we be happy that with the ratification of the interim EPA, Ghana has access or continued access to a wider market in terms of the European Union market, which comprises of over 20 countries with a population of over 742 million. Well, this doesn't seem to be the case because there are some arguments around. For a long time, the debate has been raging on as to whether or not Ghana should sign the EPA. And at the heart of this debate is the issue about the implications of the EPA on the country's overall or long-term socio-economic development aspirations, and indeed, by extension, those of the ECOWAS sub-region. So Ghana signed the interim EPA in December 2007, pending the finalization of negotiations for the signing of the full EPA. Now, with the signing of the IEPA, which is the interim EPA, Ghana gained continued access to the European market when the earlier framework governing the relationship of the parties expired in 2007. However, the current EU regulation, which grants market access to Ghana and other interim EPA-eligible countries, will expire on 1st October 2016. So what is the government to do? Now, with this deadline fast approaching, this meant that a failure to ratify the IEPA, the interim EPA, would put the country at a loss in terms of running the risk of trade preferences that were previously available to us not being granted to us, and it had the potential of derailing the non-traditional export sector of the economy. And we know that the non-traditional sector is a major contributor to the country's GDP. But the argument still remains, in spite of the ratification of the interim EPA, that what is the overall consequences or implications of the EPA on Ghana's socio-economic development in the long term. This is what we'll be looking at, and whether or not there are other alternatives to having greater or a wider access to the European market and any other market for that matter. Then we'll turn our attention to the Eurobond issue. Government attempting to issue a fifth Eurobond on the international financial markets, bringing about some controversy. Now, the background to this, back in 2004, when at the completion of the decision point of the HIPC initiative, the Kufuor administration considered, among other things, floating sovereign bonds for the first time in a bid to raise funds for government to embark on national development. So consequently, an amount of $750 million was issued as the first Eurobond for Ghana at a coupon rate of 8.5% per annum, with a maturity date of January 2017. That was a 10-year bond. Then the second Eurobond came, which was issued in 2013, and that raised an amount of $1 billion at a coupon rate of about 7.9 per annum, maturing in August 2013, also a 10-year bond. The third Euro bond was issued in 2014, and that raised also another $1 billion at a coupon rate of 8.125% per annum, maturing in January 2016, and that was a 12-year bond. Then came in the fourth Euro bond, which was issued in 2015, just last year, and that also raised an amount of $1 billion at a coupon rate of 10.75%, maturing in 2030. That's a 15-year bond. So put together, Ghana has raised a total of $3.75 billion United States dollars in Eurobonds since 2007. Now, government's attempt to raise the fifth Eurobond to raise another $1 billion on the international financial markets has now become a subject of controversy. Some quarters are saying that investors rejected our bond, which is casting some doubts on the credibility or the resilience of our economy. Government, on the other hand, is saying that no, investors did not reject our Eurobond. Rather, government has put a pause on the pricing of the Eurobond, as government will not refinance its debt at any price. We'll be interrogating exactly what the position is and what our options are moving forward. Then when we look at the CDD survey report, yes, we know that it's been in the news. According to a survey conducted by the CDD Ghana, 7 out of 10 Ghanaians believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. Nonetheless, Ghanaians, according to the same report, seem to be split in their evaluations of the job performance of the president and members of parliament. Nearly half approve the overall job performance of the president and their respective members of parliament, but the rest disapprove. Also, according to the report, Ghanaians place unemployment, electricity, and education on top of policy priorities that they want the 2016 elections to address. Now, what are we to make of this survey result? And indeed, other similar reports that are out there and those that are yet to come, what value should we put on them as we head for the elections? We'll be looking at this issue and more. And then when we come to the clock strike, we're asking, do we see an end in sight, given what the president said earlier on in the week, that considerations of what clock strike is looking for will be made or put in the next year's budget. And we understand that ClockSAG is to enter into an MOU with the Ministry of Employment and Labour. What are we going to see out of that? We'll also turn our attention to the BEC results that have come out, and we'll wade into the conversation ongoing on the kind of results that are coming out consistently over the years. Are we on the right track or are we not? And then lastly, when we have the time, we'll touch on the NDC's plans to launch its 2016 elections campaign. So these are the issues outlined for discussion. It promises to be exciting as usual and very thought-provoking, so you don't want to miss any part of our discussions. This is NewDay Saturday Edition, and we are starting the conversation. We'll be looking briefly at the BEC results that were released recently. We'll add our voices to the ongoing conversations. We have Dr. Janapo here now. Perhaps start with you.
Oh, you want to start?
Being an take on the issue, the BEC
results
that are in.
Let me say good morning to your cherished viewers and to my colleagues. Well, I think with regards to the BEC, it's WASSCE, not BEC. It's
the WASSCE, sorry, yes, the WASSCE.
WASSCE is senior high.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Well, I think usually every year when we have examinations, and it's been something that has been occurring for the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We are always talking about leakages, but it looks as if this year we never had any issue of a leakage either at the BC or at the WASSCE level. But the controversy, unfortunately, has surrounded around the results, and the reference point has been mathematics and English. And legitimately so, because by our system, if you don't have mathematics or English, what it means is that you cannot proceed to the next level of the academic trajectory. If you look at the data that is being provided, 2016, 2015, 2014, you realize that there's been some improvement. I mean, the data shows that there's been improvement. But you see, Abna, the point is that, like it or hate it, notwithstanding the improvement that we've chalked within the past years and using 2016 as a you still agree with me that the resource is not that
it's not the best.
It's not the best because we are talking about 50%, 53% getting mathematics, or is it English, hovering around that area. So what it means is if you have 50-something% getting mathematics, what it means is that at the end of the day, 40-something% automatically cannot move on to the next stage.
Right.
So I think it will be in our best interest if we better off than what we have now. And if we continue by how we've been moving from 2014, 2015, 2016, we continue in that direction, I think it will be good for us. But you see, the problem that we have in this country, and unfortunately, most people who speak to this issue fail to realize that examinations are just a means of evaluation.
Well, that's speaking to a bigger conversation together, which is looking at how we are, yes.
That is what it's supposed to be. I mean, BSc, WASSCE, it's a terminal period. When you finish your SSC, what it means is that the decision lies on you whether you want to continue or not. So if you are terminating at that point, the question that educators and stakeholders involved in education should ask is that person able to demonstrate what the objectives of the curriculum at that period is supposed to do?
Right.
And regretfully, Abna, you agree with me that it's not the case. Because if you take somebody with an SSS certificate who happens to work at CV3 here, what you expect of the person? Unfortunately, the person will not be able to demonstrate it. So I think our conversation should move beyond just what? Examination. It should move beyond examination. Of course, it's the easiest way to determine how successful a program is what grade the student gets. Whether the student is able to get A1 or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I think our interest should be, is this person able to demonstrate that, look, I hold a BCE, I hold a WASSCE.
I have the capacity to do
the capacity to do it. That is where I think our focus should be. And beyond that, we should also pay attention to, look, those people who are not able to proceed to the next level of the academic, of the educational ladder. What are we doing to them? Because it's a terminal program. If I say, look, I'm done, SS, I don't want to go back to school again, I want to work. Are there job opportunities? What environment have we created for those people? Because by our educational structure, it's a terminal period.
But even with talking about how terminal it is, or terminal nature of it, with BSc, there's no option to even rewrite, is there?
There's
but for WASSCE, there is. There is now.
There is now. Okay. But even then, BSc, you see, the point is that I'm looking at the policy that guides our educational program.
Right.
You know, from class 6, you have to continue to JHS. It's compulsory by our educational system. It's compulsory. So when somebody graduates from class 6, the person is not prepared by virtue of the curriculum to enter into the job market. But when somebody graduates from JHS, the person by virtue of the curriculum is allowed to enter into the job market. So if the person does not want to continue, what mechanisms or programs are you put in place to address that? But I think at the end of the day, talking about the results, I think moving forward, as a people, we need to have a constructive dialogue when it comes to most of these issues. Constructive dialogue in the sense that oftentimes, regretfully, it looks as if when the results are out, it takes partisan
dimension.
You know, because like it or hate it, education is the bedrock of a successful society.
That's true.
It's the foundation of our human resource base. So if we get it wrong, especially at a period where we are looking at these kids, they are teens, they are not mature, they are not children, they are in between. If you do not put out the best program for them, it becomes an issue. But the fact remains that this year's exam, with regards to WASSCE, was not a blunder as it's been professed.
Very well. Mr. Juntua, your take on the issue. What's the controversy about?
Good morning, Abna.
Good morning.
Good morning to my fellow panelists and good morning to our viewers. Abna, I believe that the whole curriculum that we have, how many times in a season is it overhauled? How many times is it brought up for us to interrogate whether what we have put out is benefiting the children that are being taught? I haven't heard, and really and truly, I will tell you, I don't even know what the curriculum is.
But you don't work
how
in
many,
that area.
irrespective, the fact that I don't work
Maybe
in that area, the fact that I don't work in that area doesn't mean that wards and people of Ghana shouldn't know. As my brother just said, education is the bedrock of every society in every country. And if education is not actually helping our young ones, our children, our youth to be able to move forward, then where are we going? Where are we going? For me, I believe that we should first interrogate the type of lecturers and the type of notes that they use to teach our children. Because what you put in is what comes out. How come we hear a whole secondary school, the whole group of children or youth who took examination, all of them have failed? Do you blame the young ones? No, I don't think so. But having said that, the other side of it is that, as my brother said, it's not only examinations that you use to test a child. It's not everybody who can sit and do a 3-hour examination and pass. I know people...
This is one that is looking at 3 years. It's a period of 3 years, right? From SS1 to 3.
I know people. I have a fair idea of how education is in the UK. And there, those who cannot pass exams, and the major subjects that you need to pass, whatever the case is English and maths. Those are the two main ones you need to pass. And whatever you do, if you fail English and maths over the next 10 years, you will take that exam before you can move forward. Because it's basic. They expect you to know that. However, what about the other disciplines? You know, once upon a time, you go all the way to end of Nigeria and further, those people who, technical people who were building those countries were Ghanaians, i.e. teachers, plumbers, electricians. And when you go to countries like Europe, it's the plumbers and the electricians who make most of the money. It is the masons, those who build houses, who make most of the money, because it's a skill. Are we training those who can't sit down and do an exam? Are we training them to be able to also go into other disciplines? Just last week, we heard that there is a huge challenge where cocoa farmers are concerned, because the old ones are dying out and the young ones aren't interested in it. What kind of thing have we put up to be able to encourage those farmers who have children and those young ones who want to go into agriculture, for them to take up that? You know, it's strange that when we now go through all the things we want to go through in life, we get to the age of 55, 60, we say, oh, we want to go into farming at an older age. What about the young ones? Because most of the money in America today that is made by farmers. Made by farmers. So I think that there has to be a holistic examination of the kind of educational system we have. Today, they don't teach history in our junior schools again. What do they call it? They have a name for it. Is it social studies?
Yeah, social studies and comparative.
Yeah, but in our days, it was a singular subject which you went deep into it. Geography was a singular subject which you went deep into. So as an individual, you can say, as a child, you can sit down and say, when I get to Form 3, I'm going to do history because I'm interested in, that's where my strength is. I'm going to do geography, I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y. For me, one of the things that I didn't do in school, which I'm regretting now, is the fact that I didn't learn tree. It's the fact that I didn't, to read and write tree. I'm beginning to realize that if I had done that now, I'll be a much better person because of some of the things that the tree language or the vernacular language brings us.
Right.
And so I think we should have a holistic view of our education, because these things always come up. They always come up. And we didn't try here. So we should get to the crux of it and see how best we can at least make sure that our children from a certain point on, or from this point on, would get better grades and move forward. Some of us took our A-levels abroad and went to university there. Can you do that today? You can't.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. We'll move on to Mr. Adongo. I just want you to look at this. You know, the results came out, this controversy about whether there's an improvement over last years. And I'm asking the question, don't we have the statistics to just look at, so that why is there even a dispute about this, given that there are verifiable figures or data that we could turn to?
Good morning to my co-panelists, and good morning to your cherished viewers, particularly my people from Boga Central. I think the whole controversy for me is much ado about nothing. And it is interesting because of the originator of the controversy. If this had been a debate around how do we improve educational standards, then it will be properly situated, because then we'll be looking more as proactive steps that are already being taken and that need to be taken in order to improve our educational outcomes. We all do agree that there is still the need to improve further our educational outcome, the quality of education. But to suggest from no mean person than somebody who wants to become the president of Ghana that he did not even know that what he was saying was completely false, that the standards have fallen compared to last year, when the facts are very clear that last year we had a 24% pass rate. This year we had a 30% pass rate. I don't know how Akufo-Addo wants to convince me that 24% last year was better than 30% this year. And this is no mean a person than somebody who wants to take the reins of government and is not even aware. Because now you're putting together your manifesto, you would come to education, and so you'd have been abreast with some of the basic facts that you want to improve upon, that you still don't even know the trajectory of our educational environment, and will make such a gulf and create an unnecessary waste of everybody's time, because we are focusing on a discussion that should not even start in the first place, because the facts are very clear. You can't say that 24% last year was better than 30% this year. So that is a non-starter. Now let's also say that when a political leader who is seeking the mandate of the people seek to play politics with the lives of people, students, you want to find out what is the track record of his own government. And the MPP, the best performance of the MPP was in 2008, and it was 12.9% pass rate, 12.9% pass rate, and still 30% is worse. Again, the worst performance of the NDC was in 2013, and that worst performance was 19%. So even the worst performance of NDC is better than the MPP's best performance. I hope you're getting it. So if our worst performance in 2013 was 19%, and the MPP's best performance was in 2008, which was 12.9, straight away, Akufo-Addo should not be starting this debate, because it will fall flat in the face. But what are the facts? Why is this government working so hard to improve education? And what is the track record of this government and the commitment of this government to improve education? Today, we are aware that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is adding an additional 123 new senior high schools. If he is able to deliver the 200 new schools, that will give you an additional 50% increase in the secondary schools that exist currently. How many secondary schools did his government build in 8 years? We don't have a figure. I mean, nothing. But
Mr. Dogo, yes, I mean, clearly from the earlier submissions and all, we are looking at the content of the education, not necessarily about the content, the numbers.
The schools that are being built are state-of-the-art.
Because there's more to it than just putting up the infrastructure in terms of giving quality education.
We didn't move from 19% to 24% and to 30% for nothing. It is a calculated attempt at improving educational outcomes that has brought us to 30% from 12.9% in 2008. And so that already should be telling you that teaching and learning is improving in our schools. We are providing better enabling environment for students to learn, and we are doing more to absorb most of these students. In the end, these students must end up with spaces in schools. They must get a place to be absorbed. And so to build more structures will make it easier for them to get employed. We also are looking at those that have not passed vocational technical education. And currently, there's a World Bank project that is improving expansion across all technical institutes across the country. If you go to, what do you call it, Adan right now, you will see the expansion that is going there. If you go to the technical school in my own village, in Bogatanga, you see the expansion that is going on. And it is going on across the country in order to provide additional opportunities for those who cannot go to the secondary schools, but will want to develop their technical vocational capacities. And so these are the facts that we are looking at. And so I am very, very sad that if I were developing my manifesto today, these are things that I should have on my fingertips. I should know where our education is moving. I should know the statistics as to how we are performing. And based on that, I should then be able to tell Ghanaians how I will improve on that. But he doesn't even know that now.
Very well. I will be moving on to Nana now. Nana, please. We are the the WASSCE results that are out, and the whole controversy about whether or not the figures we have is an improvement over last year's and all of that. And I'm wondering why that controversy in the first place, because we have figures, verifiable figures that you could easily turn to and all of that. So please, your take. Ms. Adongo has made some submissions in respect of what your flag bearer had said, and any reaction to that, and perhaps you go on to talk about your take on the educational system in general.
Well, good morning. And the screen showed earlier that I was missing. I apologize. Technicalities, funerals and things.
We understand.
Slow you down, yeah. My first immediate reaction is, yeah. So what if, assuming, because I don't know the technicalities. I don't know 30% versus 24% versus what is true, but I do know that something is fundamentally wrong. What's the term? Admitting without, assuming without admitting, whatever the term is, that Akufo-Addo is wrong. So what? What's the reality on the ground?
I think the question then is why throw out such...
Well, the fact is that as our education, are we doing well?
Indeed, that's a bigger conversation.
Yes, and therefore, is 30% or 24% a good representation of the kind of people we want to put out? And it's 30% of what? Percent of what? My brother was talking about 12%. 12% of what? 19% of what? I recall a few years ago when the NDC took office, they dropped the passing rate. So if 50% was the pass, they dropped it to something like 30%, so that everybody could pass. Then they could say that they've got a whole host of people. So 30% of what? You see, you seek to achieve for Ghanaians? The fact that they were able to enter a building and claim that they were in a class, or people who can think, creative thinkers, those who can really do something. 50 years' time, when I'm not alive, I can tell, wherever I am, hopefully in heaven, that we left a legacy of people who are growing. Or you want to sit on TV and brag that you have a better candidate who's churning out 30% of what? My brother, let's be serious about Ghana. The reality is that you dropped the standards. Mr. John was talking about the kinds of things you could get in school. How can you today be a Ghanaian proud to be pounding your chest that the World Bank is constructing schools for you when you have gold and diamond and all these other things, and you're supposed to have brainy people in office? And we're proud to say that's a show, that we're doing very well as a country, and therefore this is how we're churning out educated people. And those educated people are 30% of what? Please. The reality on the ground is this. Whatever the figures, we're not doing well. We're not passing people properly. They're not getting properly educated. If you read the kind of English alone that people are writing, and we've come up with this culture that, oh, English is not our language. So when you're learning something, learn it properly. When you're doing something, you do it properly. When you've gone to school and you've been taught, you learn it properly. That's what makes you human. You're different from other species on this earth. And so that's the essence of education, to expose you to the world, prepare you so you can live well, and by extension to your family and then the society. So when we're looking for a strong educational system, We're looking for one where when people are done, whatever level they're able to attain, the basics for their lives are covered. When you want people to be, the term is numeracy, yeah? They should understand numbers. What is it for? Basic writing skills, what is it for? Once you've gotten people past that, then their comprehension, when they've read or written or whatever it is, what is it for? How do they benefit, and how does the community benefit from them? That's what we're looking for in an educational system. And so today, what you claim to want to construct 200 schools. First of all, you failed on that policy because you didn't tell the truth. You're constructing beyond the actual costs. You're chopping the money, and then we're not seeing the buildings. As we speak, you cannot account for 50 schools. You cannot account for 50. You cannot point to us that you've constructed 50 schools, and you're supposed to do a certain number per year. That's something to brag about. You can't take care of teachers. You can't even take care of teachers, and you're happy to sit and brag about what you're achieving with some numbers that are even questionable. So that's the real issue. For me, the reality is that we're not getting our children to get the kind of education that they should be getting. What is going on with our educational policy? How are we handling young people who want to get schooled? And this one even cuts across. So you're talking not only of from kindergarten through primary or elementary, you're also talking about your JHSs and your SHSs and your technical schools. You're talking about the universities. Even those who would like to go beyond that. What opportunities are we providing, and how are we managing it such that it's good for us? There's a major shortfall in our teacher situation. Our teachers are constantly struggling with their monies. Nurses who go for training are suffering. They're not getting their money. Now suddenly, because of this very person you're trying to pound your chest against him about his capacity to be a presidential candidate, when he raises issues about nurses training money, then you get jittery. First you start lambasting him, then you get jittery, then you turn around and start offering money to those people because you realize that suddenly it's a good message he's got, and meanwhile you're sitting on the money. Very well, and let's move on. I'm listening to the different sides, NPP and DC. It's just making me wonder here that isn't this perhaps the main reason, or the reason why we are where we are? Because I'm looking at a statement by the sector minister who pretty much acknowledges that. It says that she's saying that we may not necessarily have achieved our targets. However, efforts must always be implemented to get it better. So there is a target. But we seem to have lost sight of the target, and we are looking at the very mediocre issues about a slight improvement or whatever, because there is a target, which for me is key. Mr. Jantua, where are we missing the mark?
What I don't understand, and I was listening to my brother Dongo here, trying to indicate that the fact that we've moved from 24% to 30% is an improvement. 30% of what? 30% of the educational setup passes that we have now improved at 30%. So what about the 70% that we haven't been able to achieve? If it was 70%, yes, then I agree we're going somewhere. 30% is mediocre. And for me, do not let us politicize things like education.
Exactly.
What are we politicizing it for?
Yes.
What Nanadu said, what Nanadu didn't say, what Greenstreet said, what Greenstreet didn't say, what John Mahama said, what John Mahama didn't say, is not the issue. The issue is the content. Are the youth getting what they need to get to be able to improve? That's the issue. And where does that come from? It comes from the classroom and how the children are taught. That's where the issue is. And if it so happens that lecturers like my brother here are not getting the amounts of comfortability that they need to concentrate, with their salaries, them to be able to meet the needs of their families and all that, it all comes into it, because they'll find other ways of making money and not concentrate. I'm not sure whether in universities still they are giving them the old notes that you and I...
Oh, yes, I think it's the order of the day, but that's what happened. Doc, you wanted to come in, please.
I think, first of all, this whole conversation needs to be posited within a context. Sure. The context being that in 2016, a couple of weeks ago, we had results of WASSCE coming out. And the argument was that the performance was so bad. That was the argument. And indeed, this whole argument that education should not be politicized, I respectfully and humbly disagree. Okay. If you won't politicize education, what else will you politicize? Because education is the bedrock.
To the extent that you miss the mark, you're looking at a target and now you're playing with numbers. I think that's where the argument is.
You need to play with numbers.
Hang on.
You need to play with numbers. Why not?
When you say you should not politicize it, attack the issue first. Before you politicize it.
That's
but you politicize it before attacking the issue.
Very well done,
Listen, we have two major political parties who want power.
Who've been in office for a
no, they want power.
They are the ones who've been there for 30 years. Have they been able to change it?
That does not mean we should put our hands in the air. These are two candidates who want power. One of them is saying that, look, the performance this year was 24%. And that performance, it's indicative of the fact that our educational system is what? It's running down. The other is saying that, no, it's not running down. It's 30%. And from 24 to 30%, there's an improvement. Of course, if you make the argument that 30% of what? 30% of the total number of people who wrote the exam. That's what it is. I'm not happy about we getting 30%. But if the argument is being made that we are running down, by the facts on the ground, we are not. That's the point that I'm trying to make. We are not, even though we are not doing best, or we are not doing as expected.
Exactly.
It's a question of little drops of water make a mighty ocean.
However you see it. However you see it. But you see,
we'll get there.
before you come, you see, the point is this. Our educational system, education as it speaks, we tend to oversimplify what education is by looking at it based on just examination. And that is where, when I was making my presentation, the argument that I made was that, look, if we have somebody graduating from JHS, what kind of a person are we producing?
Which goes to content.
Which goes to content. If you are talking of somebody who is coming from SHS, what kind of person are we producing? Even a university graduate, who is he? So, in looking at all these things, even though I agree that it's a political issue, we need to look at it from the perspective of how can we produce candidates who will better fit and be productive in society. Great.
You see, the minister, from the article on the internet that I just read, she's making reference to a target. I would have loved to know what target it is, so that when we are talking about, when we are assessing, it's against that target, as opposed to...
Targets will always change. Targets will always change. Because
but currently you're marking against a target that is still applicable.
Targets will always change. If the minister says that I need 70% or 80% target, I would say that that is a wrong, what do they call it?
Target?
Target, in the sense that educational targets should not be seen as nominal value. We are talking of the person. It's not about the person getting A. That is where people get it wrong. If I get A, and I come and sit here and I cannot demonstrate that I'm a first class student, it's useless. You understand what I'm saying? So today, as we speak, when I was in the university, when I graduated, immediately I'm looking for job skills. We have computer skills, Microsoft Word, Microsoft. Today, can you put that on your CV? No, because it's so pathetic. I mean, IT for a university graduate is like speaking English. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So how can we more or less work? My aim is not about the A. It's not about how many people pass. Of course, how many people pass is very important. But what kind of person are we producing?
How many people pass with a certain quality? And that's what, yes. Mr. Dongo, you come and let Mr. Johnson briefly.
Just a quick...
yes.
If you are trying to set a certain target, that target is over a certain duration. And so you start from kindergarten on how you train the young ones to be able to get to a position so that within a certain duration, you hit that target. What is happening in kindergarten today? That is where it starts from.
What is wrong with kindergarten?
To be able to put a mindset in a child starts from there, starts from the home, starts from interaction. For you to be able to say, I want a 70% target. You just don't get up and say, I want 70% target. You have to look on how you're going to achieve that 70% target and then work with it.
I would want to believe that whatever target the ministry has was based on a context analysis or whatever analysis they did. I want to believe it wasn't done out of a vacuum or in a vacuum. But Mr. Dongo, what should we be doing? You're talking about, yes, building infrastructure and all of that, but now clearly we are all speaking to the issue of content.
Yes, I think, you know, my challenge is that somebody starts a debate, okay, and when it falls flat in the face, you run away from the debate.
Mr. Dongo,
no,
let's lift it.
No, but it's important. It's important. People
above.
Are listening, and there are misconceptions that have been created. NDC is very clear that, and when I started my submission, I made it very clear that we know a lot still needs to be done in order to improve educational outcomes. That is the starting point.
Right.
And so a lot of work is already happening. And I'm saying that the movement from 12.9% in 2008 to 30% didn't just happen. It happened based on a calculated effort to gradually improve educational outcomes. So we need to put that in context. The other issue about teachers not being paid and the rest. What is the yardstick for measuring the commitment of a government in improving the living conditions of the people? It is your salary bill. We had 1.9 billion Ghana cedis as wages and salaries in Ghana here in 2009. Today, how much is it? 11 billion. Isn't that mind-boggling? And so it is only clear that in terms of improving people's income, teachers and workers' income, there has been an astronomical increase. But of course, people want more, and government will wish to do more. But within the constraints of the budget, are we able as a country to sustainably do more, or we cannot? So there is a need to improve people's salaries, but don't take the fact that we have moved astronomically from 1.9 billion to 11 billion. And it is there for everybody to see. And that is the only way you can measure the government's commitment to improving the salaries of workers.
Great.
Now, the other issues about content. Yes, the other issues about content. Today, we have resourced a lot of the teacher resource centers across the country, which were already constructed by the NDC and have been resourced as we speak. I cannot see a single resource center that was built by the NPP. Today, we are building ICT centers in various communities to help students improve on the teaching and learning of ICT. And we do know that ICT is now the game changer. Okay, as we speak, in the next few days, I will be constructing ICT in one of my remotest communities. Okay, to be able to bring ICT to the doorsteps of the students. So we are improving a lot on the content and in terms of improving the teaching and learning environment in order that the outcomes are better. And so when you say, there's a difference when you say that you think that we should improve. I agree. But when you say that it is worse than last year, that is a categorical statement. And you cannot now be saying that we should not focus on a clear misconception to deceive the Ghanaian people. We shouldn't be telling Ghanaians the truth, that he made a calculated effort to deceive us and to create the impression that the standards has fallen from last year. And I'm saying that is the basis of my debate, that it has improved from 24 to 30%. I am not saying that as a country or as a government, we are comfortable with 30%. And that is why the minister did indicate that he missed his target. What that should tell you is that 30% was not the expectation. There is a lot more to be done in order to improve and improve and improve. And so that focus must not be taken away from this debate. That there are two things. Somebody makes a complete categorical statement that is a false. We must address that. Two, we can have the bigger debate as to how we continue to improve educational outcomes. Right. So these are two separate things. Right. And I do believe that when we come to that debate, the NDC stand tall in terms of our track record. He did mention that when the students finish school, they might have opportunities. Where are those opportunities? Today, training colleges, we have improved enrollment by 63% within 1 year.
Yes, we'll go to that. I want us to still remain on.
That is to make sure to teach in our schools.
Great. Now,
I'm sure you'll give me a budget.
Definitely, we will do that. You will come to that, but I would want us to moving on, look at, yes, Mr. Dongo, you're talking about improving, yes, but now the question has become very, for me, the imperative question here is improve on what? Or perhaps change from what? Because we're looking at there's this consensus, whether we like it or not here, that content is an issue. But how do we change the content? Is it about increasing salaries? Is it about increasing teacher numbers? Because yes, that goes to conditions of service. Does it mean that if you improve the conditions of service, you are automatically going to address the issue of content? Which for me, you're looking at curricula, the curricula that we are perhaps applying. And I'd want you to address that, Nana. And then also, Doc, you would come in here with your experience from academia. I think it would be very useful at this point in terms of our curricula.
First of all, there's a reality. The reality is that the NDC, Mr. Dongo and his party and people in government would love us to go according to their thinking, not necessarily Ghana's needs. And then there's the reality of what Ghana is going through.
And which is what I want us to focus on, what we need, so we rise above this whole...
Yes, but as we go along...
You want to take a bite of that as well?
My doctor brother said...
You can deepen
there's a political angle to education. That's important, because you want to make sure that the bedrock of our growth is stable. So when you put out untruths, like he tried to claim about us, I also need to correct that. First of all, the reality is that technically, with regard to how they've managed our education, they failed. If you want to talk about curricula and all that, when Professor Namwa's report came, where were the NDC? Were they not in Ghana? Did they read the report? Did they think through it? Did they debate it with the rest of Ghana like Ghana was doing? Because when it was all said and done, a policy was determined and it was implemented. What was their position on that? They didn't stick to it. And then they came into office and within a year or so changed the whole thing, which then takes everybody off track. There was a benefit to that. Therefore, you'd have, talking about content would have been stronger because you allow the children to stay in school and start. The educationists are around, ask them. And there was a basis for that argument. And you're not just churning, it's not like sardines off a factory line. You're churning out brains. That was the objective. What did they do with that? Not only did they stunt that, they rushed to claim that we should drop down the pass mark so that they can pound their chests and say we've put out a lot of people who've passed. Was that good for us talking about content? The kind of passing we're looking about. You dropped it. That's the point. Did you drop it? Did you drop it? Did you not put it?
It's a lie.
From where to where? Mr. Gombo, please allow him.
You dropped the standard,
can come in with that.
The pass mark so that more people could pass. This was, I think, 2010 or so. Check, you have a phone in front of you. And don't use strong words like lie because it disrupts the program. Be more diplomatic than that. Now, the reality is that this is what has happened. Well, you've dropped the standards. Now, what are we teaching these young people in school? Doc was talking about ultimately where we're going to place them in their lives. I raised the same matter. What we're teaching them, have they even sat down to think through it? That was what was happening as part of the change that President Kufuor brought. Those 35 or so model schools that he was able to put out, have they met that standard? Because it was brain development oriented. That's what we're looking at. So when we're looking at the policy, yeah, like I said, 24 or 30% of what? You might be caught up in the politics of 24% not being the right number. That's fine. But are people able to go to school and come out with the material that we require of them as a country so that we can build? You're talking about teacher development. He's sitting here saying that his teacher income has gone up or something. Really? Today, 100 cedis at the end of 2008, Kufuor's time, is worth 25 cedis today in Kufuor's money. Because you're giving them 400 cedis, but it is not worth the amount of money. That 400 cedis you're giving them is worth the 100 cedis at Kufuor's time. So you haven't done anything. That's the reality. Don't drop. Exchange rate has gone very bad. The economy is not stable. Inflation is terrible. Everything is not going right.
So even though they've increased it in terms of absolute numbers,
it means nothing.
What was the inflation then?
It means nothing. So what we are talking about is reality. The reality is that you are not paying properly. Otherwise, the teachers will not be striking the way they keep doing. 2, you claim you are putting a teacher training what? Your ministers went to the teacher schools and they booed them. Or you think we've forgotten? We don't have short memories. Oh. They booed your ministers. Or ministers. They booed them. Yeah, it's Ghana. They booed them. Why? Because you were lying to them. You
were not telling we shouldn't use lies, so please, let's be the first, I mean.
No.
Quid pro quo, please.
No. I accept and I'm trying to justify why I used that, because I thought about it. He was referring to me directly. I'm talking about the collective policy that they were telling the people, and for reason for which they booed them. He directly, I wouldn't say he lied. That I'm sure about. Now, so they didn't tell them the truth, if that's what you want me to say. Exactly. They didn't tell them the truth.
That's more, with the truth, that's more.
Thank you, that's fine. But they didn't, and so they were booed. That one too is not true. It's true. How can it ever happen? Those are all the realities. Our teacher trainees are not happy with you. They are not happy with you. Is it true or not? It's because you are unable to meet and the money, it's not like the money is not there. It's there, but you are chopping it. That's the reality.
No, please be wrapping up.
So I'm saying that, look, the Akufo-Addo policy of 2008, of 2012, and when the manifesto comes out, you will realize, is that it's very teacher promotion oriented. It has always been, it will always be. If you like, go to the 2012 manifesto, and he actually made a whole statement on it, on how they will be trained, they'll be resourced properly, and it's not resource that benefits the party in power. It's resource that benefits the teacher so that the children benefit. That's what we are talking about. And those are the things that you should do.
Great. Please, the conversations are ongoing. We're looking at the BEC results as released by, the WASSCE results as released by WAEC, and we're getting engaged on the bigger issue of our education system and the way forward. I'll take some messages and then I'll come back to you, Doc, for you to react to some issues. So when they say, good morning, Abna, is your discussion about the content and performance of educational system in Ghana, or Nane's take on the poor results. Mr. Adongo has brought in politics and personal attack, which is very unfortunate. Dr. Janapo and Mr. Jantwe's take was spot on. This is a sad diversionary submission, and this is from IB. Good morning, Abna. Our syllabus is overloaded to be covered within 3 years, and our politicians must stay out of educational system. This is YUK in Cape Coast. The year which recorded the highest percentage of passing in WASSCE results was in 2012, which was as a result of the 4-year term policy put in place by the NPP government in 2008. We need to go back to that trajectory because the 3-year policy is not helping students to learn adequately to pass in their exams. Now, I beg you in the name of God to tell the NDC and NPP panelists on the show to spare us the agony of their partisans. Abna he says, good morning, Abna. Which the CDD one, will come to that when we discuss the CDD issue. Abna, the year which, no, there's a repeat. Abna, I think as a country we copy things blindly and wrong. Never be the same till you want to do things that America is doing. For instance, no caning in our schools. And this is the effect of it. This is Ilyasu and Wa. Good morning, Abna. Education. We have to start tackling it from the basic education level. Most of our teachers need more in-service training. The earlier we start, Sapon in Konongo. Good morning, Abna. Our educational system focuses much on examination than inculcating other disciplines in the children. And this is Kofi Wayo, is a teacher. Sule in Offenso says, please, Mr. Dongo, we have a vocational school in Offenso, Amwewi, and we are seeing nothing being done by the government as again. Good morning, Abna. NDC does not understand the meaning of quality education. They preach quality education when coming into office. 4 years down the line, this is the result we are getting. We need a change in government. This one saying, Abna, what's the importance of statistics and data? Please tell your panelists that it is used for planning, so they should stop making it look as though it's not important. This is Aram Adenta news site. And last one here, coming from Mentor Thompson in Kumasi, says, Abna, good morning, and permit me to say that our education system has been over-politicized. Not just that, our curricula lack interest. There's nothing a system, and our basic education lacks direction. As a country, we need a national policy on education, progressive development plan that is immune to petty political cacophony. For now, the whole system needs overhauling. Doc, back to the issue about the pass mark being dropped and all of that, but touching on the last texter's comments, our system needs overhauling. Is that the way to go?
Well, I think, first of all, with regards to the pass mark, I wouldn't want to get into because it has a lot of political ramification in the sense that our and the basic level is organized by an external body, which is WASSCE, and WASSCE comprises a number of countries within the West African sub-region. So it's not one body or institution that has the authority to determine how grades are given or stuff like that. But that said, you see, Abna, let's face it, we don't have a perfect educational system in this country. And I can say for a fact that as at the time that Penny Jantua was in school, he was complaining that the educational system was not the best.
Were you?
No.
Well, I can tell you for a fact. No, let me talk.
Okay, please let him land. Yes. That was supposed to be a rhetorical question.
No, it's a rhetorical question. But let me say why I say no. Because in those days, the tutors would make sure that you learned, and they would give you the curricula as to what they feel you would be able to, how you pass your exams. They put the pressure on you to study, to learn.
Doc, please.
I said if you came up and your grades were grade 3, you'll be just one in a few who, most of people will get grade 1, grade 2. If you get a grade 3, it is just embarrassing.
Very well. So am I only saying, so back then there were lots of classes, no favors? Very well. Please carry on, yes.
I made reference to Penny Jantua because historically, if you take our educational system after Nkrumah's educational policy of 1951 up to this time, there has always been a shortfall. Indeed, there were times that you taught at the primary school or even at the JHS level with something called Standard 7. You understand? Not too long ago, even just for first time, I mean, for you to teach at the basic level, you needed set A. Today, the minimum requirement is diploma. You understand what I'm saying? The minimum requirement to teach at the basic level is diploma. The point that I'm trying to make here is this, Abna. Look, as a country, I speak on this issue because I have some kind of background. I hold a PhD in curriculum and instruction, and I've had the opportunity of studying curriculum of different countries. I can say for a fact that our educational system, in terms of policy, in terms of curriculum, is not bad. It's not.
It's not good either.
No, let me finish. It's not bad. I'm saying the policy, the document, the guiding principle of our educational system, right from kindergarten up to the university level, is one of the best. But it's not the best. Why? Because of practice. Implementation, practice.
Yes.
The policy is good, it's fantastic, it's
operationalizing
excellent. You
it
can
is an issue.
compare it to any, but it's not the best.
It's like the laws we have in this country.
I made reference to my background. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the law.
So you see,
the point is that the practice, we have challenges. And I think there are so many factors. I would have wished that, look, every year when we have exam, we should have a postmortem document of how the students fared, what were the factors that went to it, and what are the measures that have been put in place to address it in future.
Are you saying that is not done?
I don't know.
Mr. Gentleman.
No, the chief examiner, okay, or the chief examiner's report or whatever it is. But you see, one fundamental problem that we have in this country is teacher absenteeism. And I can tell you some of the factors that contribute to it. If you want to do a serious study of teacher-student contact hours in most deprived areas, take Adongo's constituency. I can tell you that about 20 to 30% of the teachers who are in active service are in school. They are doing distance education. They are doing sandwich. Indeed, do you know when they go for distance education? Distance education normally go for classes on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So if you're going for classes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what it means is that the Friday, half of it, you are not in active work because you have to leave. And Monday, if you happen not to have a center in your locality, it means you have to travel. Do you know what it means? What it means is that during the weekend that you're supposed to use to do your lesson notes, research,
it's lost.
It's lost. So I think, look, it's good we give these students the opportunity to be educated, but I think we have to look at it in a way that it does not affect what? the student. We have something called sandwich. Sandwich normally runs from June to August. June to August, check the basic education calendar. They are in active school. They are in school. And the teacher is out every year. You understand? So I think, look, education is the foundation of every successful society. But we can only be successful if we are serious about it. And I'm not saying as a country we are not serious about it. We are, but I think, yes, buildings are good, IT centers are good, but there are some petty things that if you are not careful,
it's a combination of factors we need to look at.
You miss it.
Because you're talking about the absenteeism, which would, I mean, one way of dealing with that is clearly having supervisors going around and all of that. But
you see,
but this problem has been there for the longest time.
I can tell you for a fact that I know supervisors who connive.
So who supervises the supervisor then?
Who themselves are absentee supervisors.
Yes.
You know? The question I ask is that we have come back to this issue time and time and time and time
like many other issues.
Why are we doing it so? Why are we doing so? Now let me ask.
We need to be wrapping up so we move on to the next episode.
Let me ask the two as the media will call it, main political parties. When the MPP was in power, what was the rate? Was it above 30%? Was it above 30%?
I thought we had moved beyond that.
NDC have come into power. They are saying that 30% is good. Have they achieved anything for us? Absolutely nothing.
We are not saying it's
because if it so happened that the MPP, when they were in power, they had reached a level of 50%. NDC came and they brought it down to 30%. They would have a voice to say something. But they haven't been able to achieve that.
Okay, so we are moving on to the next topic lined up, which is Parliament's ratification of the interim EPA. And we're looking at how that would, the implications of that, benefits, losses, pros and cons, and all of that. We're looking at that. So we're starting the conversation. Mr. Janto, I'll start with you. EPA, interim EPA, has been ratified.
You know, the EPA started all the way in 2003 and it was part and parcel of the Cotonou Agreement, ECOWAS. They weren't able to reach a decision by 2007. They weren't able to reach a decision in 2009. Ghana seemed to have held back till this point. You were saying in your intro that we have up to 1st October to be able to ratify. But looking at the benefits of it, how does that benefit Ghana as a whole? In terms of capacity, in terms of capability, in terms of even the products that we'll be exporting onto the European market. How does that benefit us? Is the benefit that ECOWAS, the EU are going to gain and the benefit Ghana are going to gain, are they equal? Do we have the right capabilities in Ghana to be able to add value to the raw materials that we have? And I'll give you a typical example of the export of pineapples into Europe. Once upon a time, I was a chief exporter of fresh produce into Europe. Chief exporter in the 90s.
I'll add that to your credentials.
And it so happened that even the size of the pineapple was a question. If you had 1.1 kilo as against the Ivory Coast 1.2 kilo, that was one bit. The second bit was the packaging, the kind of packaging you use. Either you use telescopic boxes, those boxes where you've got the box there and the lid comes right down so that it's stronger, or you use flip boxes where you just flip it and you close it, and they would reject your produce just because your packaging was not right. So if you take export of pineapples, we don't have the kind of packaging that can sustain the journey to Europe, and it gets there and it's rejected. Is that equal benefit? So it would behold on us to make sure that the right packaging is in place, to make sure that all the inspections we do, that we have the capacity to do that. today? I don't think we do. Now, go across board to Cote d'Ivoire and see what they put in place. We cannot compete with Cote d'Ivoire when it comes to the export of non-traditional products. We cannot compete with them because they've got it down to a T. So where's the benefit? What are we talking about? What kind of products are we talking about here? Let's go into poultry. The state of our poultry today. So we're going to open up the market. Europe is going to pour all those dead chickens, which would probably give much problems to our poultry industry. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there are certain products that we won't benefit from. For instance, tuna that we export into Europe. When you go to supermarkets today in Europe, they sell Ghanaian tuna, which is good. Which is good. But when you look at the content and you look more geared towards the benefits are geared more towards Europe than to Ghana. So let's look forward and let's be a bit positive. What can we do to make sure that we take maximum advantage of being able to access and have the good quality products we send? And I think that has got to do with an ECOWAS thing, where ECOWAS leaders will sit down and try and put certain policies in place that would help build the capacity of our exporters in this country.
But I mean, the argument has also been that, well, I mean, when you're looking at ECOWAS, the interests seem to be varied, a heterogeneity of interests, and perhaps some of them have certain exit plans, and also there was no pressure on them to actually act in a certain way. But we, as Ghana, given the context that we're operating in, and the fact that, yes, the non-traditional export sector stood to lose if we didn't move on. The question is, what were we to do? We know that, yes, ultimately, if we don't put certain measures in place, we may pretty much end up losing out big time. But in the interim, did we have a choice?
In terms of
actually
signing or not signing? Well, that is a government decision that government has taken to sign. But, you know, apart from all this, one of the crucial issues that we also need to look at is the access to finance. How do we get our banks to be strong enough to be able to support exports? Are the banks liquid enough to go into long term? Because exports of the kind of products we have in West Africa here and in Ghana has got to do with added value. And if you're not adding value to these products, how do you compete effectively? Because most of the products that are going to come from Europe are not primary products. They are products that have value has been added to them. And so if we can add value to our products and we are exporting raw materials, it's the same raw materials we're exporting there, they add value to it and they bring it back to us. And so from the word go, I wasn't really for this EPA thing. But as time has gone on, I'm looking at how we can benefit. If there are particular products we are good at, let's start adding value to those products so that we can also take advantage of some of the benefits that it will bring to us. But initially, Europe is going to benefit more than we are going to benefit. Going forward, if we have governments and we have an ECOWAS treaty where we look to, you know, strengthen the capabilities of our exporters, then maybe yes, going forward we'll be able to gain much benefit from this EPA treaty that we've signed.
Great. Mr. Dengo, a similar question. How do we get to benefit from this continued access we're going to be enjoying on the EU market, which is a huge market?
I think first, we, as a country, we have to accept the fact that we live in a global village. And we need to also accept the fact that gradually the barriers...
Define a global village. This global village they talk about, I don't see it. Ghana, the benefit is one-sided.
I'm making a point.
Yes, I want to understand global village. I don't understand it.
I am saying that we live in a global village where Ghana is not a country in isolation. Ghana must work within the context of the broader economic order.
Even if it's to our
we
disadvantage.
need to also understand.
To allow him to land.
we need to also understand.
That used to be mine.
That to also understand the fact that as a country, whether we like it or not, we must find a way to work around the non-existing protectionism that used to be available to countries. Several years ago, it was easier for you to just slap heavy duties on certain products in order to protect your import substituted industries and grow them until such a time that you are comfortable enough to expose them to the rest of the world. That is becoming very difficult. We need to also understand the fact that each bloc of the global community tries to advance its own interests. And so Ghana, as part of ECOWAS, has a position. We know that under the Cotonou Accord, Ghana, as part of the rest of 16 West African countries, took a decision to work collectively towards achieving a common, better bargaining power in order that the EPA will be favorable to the rest of the countries in West Africa. And if you understand the fact that out of these 16 countries, 12 of them are described as least developed countries, and only 4, including Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Cape Verde, are seen as developing economies. So there's even a bigger picture of how do we even support the least developing countries who cannot negotiate strongly on their own, so that together as West Africa, we have a common position that is favorable.
But they have unlimited access under the everything but arms principle, which is making them really reluctant to actually, come on board as...
Africa was part of the Africa, Caribbean, Pacific arrangement. It is not the first time this preferential arrangement is taking place. We operated the Africa, Caribbean, Pacific arrangement, which was built along the same protocols. But that agreement expired and had to be renewed starting from 2003. By 2007, we were unable to reach an agreement. An extension was made again to 2009, and we still couldn't. We reached an agreement in 2014. It was now left with the rest of the countries to sign onto it. Now, that debate then brought us where we are. The decision then was, at the close of 1st October, what would have been the options available to Ghanaians? One, we do agree that some 400 million euros of business would have been lost to Ghana. 2, there is an attraction of some level of foreign direct investment into Ghana on account of the favorable environment to process some of these products that we are talking about in order that they can access the European market and create jobs for us. 3, we are also aware that some companies had set up here on account of these EPAs and ACP and needed to be compensated if we pulled out and they lost the market. So Ghana was in a tight corner, just as most of African countries. So we need to put that in context in order to understand why there was a need to make sure that we meet this deadline. Now, what are some of the benefits? Can we tell when is the appropriate time for Ghanaian companies to be prepared to face the international community and to face the international market? Can we?
When we have a local industry that is well capacitated.
That we must, yes. So we now must be looking at what are we going to do in order to prop up the capacities of these companies. Competition itself can bring out the best in people. I believe that if we expose these companies to the rest of Europe, yes, they will struggle, but what are the mechanisms that can be put in place in order to cushion them and to make sure that they are able to take full advantage of the market? We have a strategy to grow our non-traditional exports to over 5 billion a year.
How?
So it is part of the process. There are facilitation efforts that are being put in place.
Because there are conditionalities attached to this, which pretty much will not allow governments to give concessions to, for instance, smallholder agricultural entities and other things like that. The very things that would enhance the supply side of the equation, we are not going to be getting. So how do we build the capacity?
No, listen. What we need to understand currently is that we are, as a country, putting in steps in order to support these businesses that would export. What do we do? Let me give you an example. I come from Boga. We have these baskets, okay? Since I was born, the basket that I saw when I was a child is still the same basket that I see today. The people in Vietnam, the people in China have come to take this basket. They've gone back, they've developed these baskets into part of the total clothing accessories of the world. So just as you buy clothes every day, you are seeing new designs of these products.
So how come we haven't done the Vietnam thing?
So how do we do it?
Exactly.
As a country, we must take advantage of that, develop that, and move into the market.
How do we develop it? That's a question.
Yes, that is the reason I am telling you that. How do we develop it? It's not something that I, as a person, can tell you. There are institutions such as the Ghana Export Promotion Authority that is working to improve the capacities of these companies that will do this job. And so, again, we do have an export exim bank, which has recently been formed. The board is in place. The Export Exim Guarantee Bank, it's supposed to finance the export of these companies. Okay, there are trade facilitation activities of the Ministry of Trade that are expected to improve the capacities of these companies. And so there are several other activities, including training regimes and support that should help them to take advantage. And I do believe that at the end of the day, if our companies become globally competitive,
how do they become?
You see, but
it's not a one-day job. You see,
there's so much literature on the EPA. Mr. Dongo, just a minute, please. There's so much literature on the effects, the implications of the EPA on African countries or West African countries, for that matter, including Ghana. So much. There's this one by Action Aid. And there are the benefits, the costs, and everything have been cited here. There's this one I would like to read here. That government, under an interim EPA, is constrained from enhancing economic growth by providing funds on concessionary terms for the development and promotion of local industries. That is a conditionality that we would need to comply with, so that you are constrained to the extent within which you can actually advance funds to your local industry to prop them up. So there you have a challenge. How are you going to build the capacities?
Let me ask you, in the midst of all this, Mali, what is the option? What other option is available to Ghana? We need to ask that question. You see, it's very easy for Action Aid and other... It's not very easy, it's a fact. And other socialist-oriented organizations, okay, such as Third World Network and the rest, who have never been in favor of free trade across the world. And that is their modus. You can, even if they were in the US, they will still be against free trade. Are you getting the point? So we need to know their ideology and understand that these people stand for something. ISODEC will never support free trade anywhere in the world. And so at the end of the day, these are institutions that over the year, even the ACP, they listed all these things that they are, what do you call it? They are bringing back again. Did Ghana sign on to the ACP? What was the benefits to Ghana in implementing the ACP? Are you getting the point? What is significantly different from what we are implementing now? And I'm saying that we need to access the export market. But you cannot access the export market while you decide to block your market. It doesn't happen.
Very well. Let me move on.
Just a minute.
Briefly, and then I move on to...
Before the West...
yes, the West side comes in.
The question I will ask... The question I will ask is, in all these conditions and terms that the EU brought, they were
negotiating all of those things.
Were we part of it? And who is it to benefit more? I will tell you, when he talked about baskets, what we can do.
Briefly, and then
Yes. Go around Accra and see the different places where basket weaving is plotted all over. As a government, what you should do is bring all these people to one point. We said who? Singapore or where? Korea or Malaysia have come for our technical way of doing baskets, and they have added it to what their exports. Take Ghanaians to those places. Get them to learn the quality.
You think that is not being done?
I haven't seen it.
It's been done.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, because when I go to Selfridges in London, I don't see Ghanaian cane chairs. The Far East. And those cane chairs, one is 300-400 pounds. We'll be able to do it here. So we train the trainer to come back. We have this cane village where you want cane, you go there, and they are training them for export. We would not get any use out of this if we don't take the reins in our own hands to train our people to do.
To Nana and Doc here.
In the West.
In the West, yes. A clear case in point is the AGWA. The African Growth Opportunities. The AGWA. I'm looking at the AGWA as a case study here and how we were to have benefited. Exactly. So clearly you have the AGWA situation to learn from. Population of US at the time at 2014 was about 318 million. Population of EU 742 million by 2013. Now see, it's more than twice the figure of the population of America, and we couldn't even get far in that sector. So you're looking at this bigger market. What are our chances? Nana, and then we go to Doc.
Well,
chances of taking advantage of the EU market.
As far as I understand these things, and I can't claim to be as hard on issues like this as maybe education, but as far as I understand these things, you require a certain basic platform in your economy from which manufacturing, for example, will jump. I mean, I've been inquiring. I just asked the Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng, for example, and he tells me that in this Fourth Republic, there's an average growth of 4.6% of our manufacturing. In 2008, the best that was recorded at the time was 4%. So we didn't meet that average or even go past it. In 2015, it's 2.2%, which means we even dropped and didn't go well. The bottom line question is what you asked earlier. What exactly should we be doing to tweak ourselves into position to take advantage of this EPA? With the AGWA, for example, I never really paid attention, so I don't have a clear perspective on why we didn't succeed there. But
the same reason, supply side issues, capacity of the local industries,
very well,
in terms of quality standards and all of that.
Yeah, but I think that when it comes to manufacturing, first of all, I think Kwame raised the matter of financing. Our financing has changed. Very recently, you could have banks walk up to you offering you money. Now it's not there. What has happened? Why is that the case? They should tell us. The banks should tell us. Manufacturers should tell us why they can't even themselves also go forward if they have been if they haven't been. That's a primary thing, because you need the money to start. Now, you just raised something that I've heard about, the fact that governments, as part of the agreement, you're not supposed to do certain things to push.
Right.
But it raises the question, where's our creativity? If we're signing on to that and we can see that there, it means that we must also be creative, because those people themselves, that's what they do. In spite of the fact that they have such rich economies, they're still helping manufacturers, they're still helping farmers, they're still helping a whole host of people. So what is it that we should be creative about as government, as policy? What should we be creative about in order to allow for this to happen? And then it goes back to your first topic, the matter of education. Because honestly, if we're going to Bolga and the baskets are still there, first of all, the Bolga baskets shouldn't change, because there's a history to what it is. What he raised, which is true, which should happen, is that we should also be creative about what we have. You keep what you have and be creative so you can expand the interest base. You know, everybody comes. Yeah. The reason they can't do that, one, finances, two, creativity. We're not allowing them, we're not creating an environment for them to be creative. We're not giving them a perspective on the world so that they can be creative. What is it that makes the people in China or whatever think those things and come up with them and sell them to us? Why is it that we're not able to do it? They don't have a better brain than we do. It's our environment that, you know, we need to be creative. We need to allow free thinking on that level, creative artists, what have you, all those. You need that industry to boom. And it allows people to go and do these things. So there's the technicality of what goes into manufacturing, and that includes that. We're not encouraging that. So for me, if we're not going to allow, we're not doing things that will make, I mean, when Parliament sits on chairs imported from China, when we have the Pogas and others from here, at what point do we get Ghanaian manufacturers to believe in themselves and push further? I don't even remember the figure. Honorable, if you can help us, I mean, this is friendly fire. If you can help us, what was the figure that was approved for this type of thing?
I think you should ask Kukwati. He sits on the finance committee.
No, but it's your partner. So, what thinking went into that, and into a whole host of other things? We're pounding our chests about, and I'm sure there's something Kwame will be happy to hear. My version of, we're pounding our chests about having constructed this building or that building from this Chinese company or that Indian company, and in the 1960s, some of the best roads that lasted 15-20 years were constructed by Ghanaian companies. So exactly what have we, it isn't rocket science or Chinese science or US science, it's just we have the human resource that we're not developing and giving advantage to. And if this EPA is for example, I just read from another piece from Kofi Bento. He argues that we didn't have a choice. I think that's what the Honorable also tried to argue. Now, one of the technicalities is that we're getting about 80% imports from the EU. 80%. How does it position our manufacturing base? So there's this catch-22 thing. There's a certain benefit, and we have this insatiable taste for non-Ghanaian things. Extremely insatiable taste for non-Ghanaian things. Is that even that should be tackled? Anyhow, Akufo-Addo government will tackle that. So but generally, well, we're in there.
But how do we make sure that it's not all,
it doesn't squeeze us, yes,
even more?
Yeah.
Because exactly, like, I mean, referring to the Agua situation,
right.
And for me, looking at
so for
that,
me, the policies must be, it allows industries to do what they can do best. We should create, you see, one of the things you don't do, it's like these mobile phones. Nobody sat and told somebody, you go and think about the mobile phone. The environment was created for people to say, wouldn't it be great if we had mobile phones? Sure.
You identify a need and then...
Exactly. We're not doing that, and we're not allowing people to be in that environment, because teachers earlier, they need to eat.
Very well. Let me move on to Doc. Doc, well, let's look at this EPA thing. I mean, we are in the situation. Our hands were tied. Well, that's what people are saying. We pretty much didn't have any option. We just had to do that. But how do we ensure that once in this situation, we get the best out of it?
Well, I think it's important for me to concede that you are asking me for an expert.
Oh, no, I mean, you're concerned as a citizen.
No, but whatever I'm going to say with regards to this thing is like the West Side. I mean, it's the West Side position. We are street men. But you see, the fact is this. I think this issue needs to be understood, and some little explanation needs to be given. We are talking of an economic partnership agreement between Ghana and the European Union. And this agreement, more or less, is in the form of a marriage. And Ghana is going into this agreement as an individual country. Because as we speak now, there are countries like Nigeria, like Gambia and Mauritania who are not into that partnership. Ghana is going in as an individual country. And I was listening to Openi, and Openi made reference to the fact that this thing started somewhere in 2003. And in fact, Kufuor signed an agreement, interim agreement in 2007.
Which was ratified like
2007, and now we are in 2016, which is about 9 years. So the reason why I make reference to this is that under normal circumstances, so ideally we should have thought through it very well. You understand? So the issue of the debate as to whether there will be benefits or not should have even been addressed long time. And I find it, I don't know, when I read on this issue, there's not that much of a position against it, especially when it comes to government side and from the political angle.
Oh yes, when you read the committee's reports from Parliament, it's just,
Parliament has agreed.
So many benefits and all of that.
So that is where we are starting. So if you look at it, it's a done deal. But people need to understand that even before we get into this agreement, what has been signed is just an interim agreement. The proper agreement.
Yes, EPA
before we get into this, it's important for people to know that Ghana, as it stands now, trades with the European Union. In fact, the European Union is one of our biggest trade partners.
Yes,
it's our biggest.
But the thing is that we have the fiascos. They didn't necessarily have that. But with this one, you're going to have a reciprocal arrangement.
Let me explain. We trade with them as it stands. We import stuff to the European Union. The difference, no, as it stands now, that's what is going on. We export there and we import there. It's as simple as.
But for the free,
no, that's what I'm getting. The difference now is that Ghana can be able to export there duty-free and tax-free.
And they too the
same.
And
they will also do the same. That is where the whole argument is, and that is where we need to what? We need to interrogate it.
Exactly.
Abla, if you remember, you made reference to AGWA. I remember when AGWA was, and that was around 2004, 2005. I happened to be in school, and I happened to have had the opportunity of reviewing AGWA to see what it is. And most of us, I remember when Clinton came and signed it, that was Clinton, right? I think it was Clinton. It was Clinton. No, Bush. When Bush signed it, I mean, there was so much euphoria. And you remember NEPAD. NEPAD and all those things. The problem that we have as a country with reference to NEPAD and AGWA and speaking to it relative to this particular policy is that oftentimes I heard Openi say, look, these countries have advantage over us, and if we are not careful, they are going to kill our manufacturing industry and all those things. I agree with him. It's a fact. Because even based on this particular agreement, there's a contingency fund of about $5 billion that is being made, that is being put in place by the European Union to more or less help countries, poorer countries that get themselves involved in it, to prop them up. So it means that they themselves, based on their own analysis, know that, look, there's a probability of shocks to these countries. But you see, why didn't we take advantage of AGWA? We couldn't take advantage of AGWA because the US market has its own specification in terms of what exporting there. The US market has its own specification.
It's a capacity issue.
The European Union, no, but let me finish. The European Union has its own specification in terms of what exporting there. I do not think that it is excusable for us as a country to say that we cannot meet that specification. So because of that, we are getting out of it. No. We need to be able to meet it.
Yes, we need to. But how do we meet that?
We need to work towards it. We need to work towards it.
You see, it's one thing looking at it as an ideal situation, but realistically, we need to be innovative, creative.
We shouldn't be lazy. We shouldn't be lazy.
But I want to hear those solutions.
And that is where leadership. Let me learn leadership. I heard Nana Fredua say that, look, if Akufo-Addo government comes in, he's going to do A, B, C, D. Mr. Dongo is talking about what his party is doing. For us, we are going to look at these two parties based on what they are doing and what they intend to do, and be able to cast a vote as to who is qualified to lead this country. I don't think it is excusable for us to say that we are not getting into this partnership because we are not able to. We should be able to, because the reality on the ground is that we are in a competitive arena. Whether you like it or not, we are in a competitive arena.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, if you do not get into this agreement, what is the consequence and what is the alternative? Do you have any better alternative? I don't think so. You understand? I think as a country, this particular agreement, in as much as I have certain questions about it, in as much as I'm a little bit skeptical as to how it's going to benefit us as a country, I think it provides us an opportunity for us to what? For us to improve. It provides us an opportunity for us to what? To be competitive. You understand? It provides us, I mean, after all, whether I like it or not, if we are getting imports for duty-free, what I know is that by common sense, it means the cost of a phone that I probably would have imported from Europe is not going to be less.
But then there's
that said, let's face it. Traditionally, what are some of the products that we import from what? From Europe?
Everything and anything.
Everything and anything. And you agree with me that most of the things that we import, unfortunately and quite regretfully, they are most of the things that we cannot even produce.
Great.
It's
so
a fact.
You go with your
and most
thing
of the
about
things that we export,
local industry.
We export.
Just a minute, yes.
So I think an interesting agreement that we are getting into. I don't see this as anything that is very new. interestingly, with regards to this, there's some kind of skepticism and cynicism in terms of how it's going to benefit.
Or more of being realistic?
No, we the ground. I'm gonna think about it this way. If the agreement was that Ghana can export to Europe duty-free, tax-free, but we import with what duty and taxes, what would it have been? People would have raised their hands in and be happy. The only problem that we have, why people are a little bit skeptical, is that look, if we allow these guys to bring their products here duty-free and tax-free, it's going to kill our local industry.
Totally.
That is what it is.
Yes, so and we're looking at volumes, which has implications for government revenue.
No, let's work towards it. We have to work towards it.
I mean, there's a projection about government revenue. Yes.
We haven't finished yet. We come back to it.
Just a second, yes, please. Mr. Jantua, briefly, and then I'll come back to you for your, yes. Just briefly.
Yes. As far as I can see, it's a dependency thing that the EU is doing. Doc just said, they have voted certain monies there to prop up countries that aren't able to be to survive. Why don't they use that 5 million to build capacity in us before they bring this thing out?
They should build our capacity.
Well, if they are prepared to put money down,
why should they
put money down? Also be able to export, rather help us to build the capacity. Because, as you said, it's going to affect government revenue.
Totally, and the projections
now, when
scary.
When it affects government revenue, we now need to go back to them to beg for money for our economy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Does that help us?
Great.
It doesn't.
Good.
So we should take the bull by the horns.
We're coming back.
We should take the bull by the horns the way the Nigerians have done and say, at this particular moment in time, we are not ready.
But speaking about that, Mr. Jantua, the Nigerian situation, again, like I said, the interest within the sub-region, the ECOWAS sub-region, Nigeria couldn't be so much bothered as we are because they have the majority commodity, fantastic, in oil, and so they don't.
But we are getting there.
Exactly. So it's a bit. It's not that balanced, which is what we are struggling with. Mr. Dongo, I'll come to you, but please let Nana come in.
Yes, the contributions from the West have been fantastic. And we're building on that point.
Carry on.
My brother raised, brother on this side. My brother raised some 2 or 3 very key points that I think stick out. One, the challenge to government, whether it's NDC in government now.
Nana, please just hold your thought there. Briefly, we wrap up. We bring in the Eurobond issue and carry on.
First point to the first issue based on information I put out there. Basic level grades were 30 and it was taken to 42, which means that it allows you to do all kinds of bad, as a low level. Okay. A1 passes 80. Now it's been dropped to 75. So it encourages. I'm trying to answer the Honorable's question he was posing to me. Those are the problems.
Yes,
so in other words, we dropped the standards. That's what we did. Now on the matter on the table, yes. My brother raised some 3 what I consider poignant issues. One, the challenge to the political parties and what we are offering and what people should pay attention to with regard to this EPA matter and therefore our environment, our business environment at large. 2, the capacity of the Ghanaian. How capable are we and what can be done to solve that? And then 3, what were we doing from 2007 when President Kufuor led us into this till now? For me, let's take the last one first. Is it not crucial that we deal with that question and therefore task the next government of Ghana to make sure that in situations of this nature we're very well prepared, which also is a burden even on the media, because for all intents and purposes you direct issues in this country. No matter what we do on the ground, when it's mass media, you control the thinking.
Agenda.
So what have we done all these years with that? How interesting have we made it for people to debate the issues and challenge government on their failing to deal with this thing properly so that we'll be properly prepared? So that's on that matter. Now, and therefore it answers the question of what we should be doing. Then the capacity of the Ghanaian. It's campaign season. I'm vice chair. busy campaigning. I get to go to a lot of places. The Ghanaian has the capacity. They're capable of doing the things. What they need is the leadership. If we lead them in the right direction, they will meet the standards. Why? Who, what do you call this? Pogas, I referred to Pogas earlier. Who led Pogas? Pogas himself generated his own business and became the standard that he is and has potential to be bigger. You go to these pineapple people in Sawam, Blue Skies. It's a private industry thing. So, and then I go into the villages.
And don't forget Ghana's new car,
Safo. So it's about giving the Ghanaian the right environment. So when, and this is where I'm allowed to show him that at least on our side, our utterances tell you where we want to go. No, you see, but let's not be cynical about the importance of politics in this matter, because it is what has led us here. It was a political decision that's led us here. So how do you meet that demand? Akufo-Addo is promising you one district, one factory, for example. So if I go to a village like Obinyao or Bekwai Krum and they are planting pawpaws, and now that the whole product is, and Kwame, I'm sure you can verify, pawpaws used to be huge. Now they are like some small somethings. Yes, nobody is even looking at that. Yes. And then we're going to, if you can process it and take advantage of all the things that it has to offer, you're creating employment, you're letting people be creative, and it allows you to meet certain markets. So I think that he raised from the West, very good, yeah. And these are the kinds of things that we should be debating and querying.
Very well. Mr. Dongo, your take on this, and then we move on. Briefly, last words on the EPA.
Yeah, but I think when we start talking one district, one factory, I want you to know that the people of Bonga are waiting for you know what we call Kose factory there. And
you know what Akufo-Addo will do for you? He'll allow you to start it and he'll push you so that you don't go.
And then there's another one for Kulukuli in Boga. So
yes. Let's wrap up on the EPA, please.
I mean, the issue.
I hope you're listening.
How we get the best out of a situation like this?
The issue about the EPA is a very serious issue. It goes to the bottom of how do we develop the capacities and competitiveness of our organizations. I want to say that most companies today are taking that are getting ISO certified, and it is the basis for which they can properly enter the European market and compete favorably. I want to also say that, yes, most of the issues that as a country, in order to make these companies competitive, are things that whether it is NDC or MPP, we have to put our mind to it. And I do know that a lot is already being done to improve the capacity of these companies. The Ghana Standards Board, we know, is very particular about making sure that whatever we are producing today meet certain standards. And those standards will propel them to be able to be competitive on the global market. But you see, the issue about the Ghanaian and the capacity. Sometimes when these things are politicized, I tend to laugh. In 2007, we were in this country. It's one of our biggest challenges. It's one of the areas where we import a lot. And yet in 2007, Kufuor scrapped import duty on rice. Rice had to come in free.
Be truthful and
that
put
is
it
the
in
truth.
Context.
2007.
Put it in
context. No, you have the chance to be president.
Let me make the point.
Briefly, please, we need to, yes.
I mean,
Put it in context.
If within 7 years you could not develop the capacity of the rice farmer to feed us,
that is not the truth.
And you then have to
come into Rebus, please. Let him
scrap taxes. So at the end of the day, let us be truthful to ourselves and say, how do we work towards improving the capacity of these companies so that they can take full advantage of the big market that is available out there? How do we ensure that we work towards the Ghanaian changing his taste for everything foreign, so that in the end we will be able to have that conservation of our market in order that we don't ship our jobs to products that are coming from Europe. I think that is the biggest challenge.
Very well. Great. Yes, Nana, you wanted to say something quickly, and then we move on.
What was the economic challenge for President Kufuor in 2007? Be truthful, honorable. Be very truthful. What was the challenge for all of us? In fact, it was a world problem. If you remember, Sierra Leone and Gambia and other places, people were going on strike over food. There was a world crunch. Be very honest with yourself, please.
Ghana, what happened?
Please, be honest with yourself. In order for us not to get into that crunch, he took that step. A permanent step.
Why not maize?
So Oh, come on, be honest with yourself. You just told us that the biggest import, rice was a huge import thing. Exactly. And so, yes, now you want to tell me that if he hadn't done that, the cost of rice would have, nothing would have happened. People wouldn't have gone hungry. Are you thinking about yourself or you're thinking about the Ghanaians? At the time, it was a big issue. Rice is a major staple. And you cannot do that. Stop that.
Very well. We are moving on, please. We are moving on.
Be truthful. Be truthful.
That is the truth.
It was a context.
Be
truthful.
Let's carry on.
You're not telling the truth.
We're moving on to the fifth Eurobond that, well, for now, perhaps we could describe it as having been suspended. We are looking at that. What are the implications moving forward? Some quarters are saying that, indeed, the attempt or the Eurobond for $1 billion was rejected by investors, and that is an indication of the fact that investors don't have confidence in our economy. Government is saying, on the other hand, that no, it isn't as a result. But government is not going to refinance it at any price, so it's actually suspended the whole process. What are we to make of this? Is a speculation of investors rejecting the Eurobond by reason of the fact that they were offering higher interest rates. Is it far-fetched? Mr. Johnson.
You want to start with me?
Yes.
I'd have thought you'd start with the NDC representative.
We know the NDC position. We know the NDC position, so I just want to start.
That's the government's position already. So
would it be, far-fetched for speculations to be ongoing that it was due to high coupon rates that were being offered by investors? Looking at the trend of the interest rates from perhaps 2013, we saw it rise in 2014 and then shot up to 10.75 in 2015. So, and looking at our debt to GDP ratio over those years, would it be out of place for such a speculation?
At the tail end of the last discussion, if we don't have some degree of protectionism in what we do, we are going to benefit. Because the Singapore's did that. Look at where they are.
Investors rejected it, or whether investors didn't reject it. I'm trying to.
For me,
it's neither here nor there.
It's neither here nor there.
We didn't get the funds.
We didn't get the funds. How do we move forward? You know, we like this kind of speculation, and then our media will take it up, and for the next 1 month, we'll be talking about it. When the actual meat we need to be able to tender and make sure it is cooked well, we leave it aside. So, I would like to start from the sinking fund bit. So the finance
falling back on that.
Yes, falling back on the sinking fund. The sinking fund is being supported by what? The oil revenue. A drop in the oil price will affect the sinking fund. So if the oil price drops further, right now it's hovering between $40 and $50. It's been hovering for the last probably month around that. If something happens now and it drops, will that not affect the sinking fund? Will we be able to now pay domestic debt? And so we should look at it and look at it holistically, whether what the finance minister is saying would help us to be able to clear most of these debts that we have.
So does it mean that we are not going to go back to fund,
well, we might go
to source funds from the international financial market?
But as the finance minister said, we would not take anything just because we need the money. But it will get to a point where we might...
We don't have a choice.
Yes, we don't have a choice. We might have to go back and renegotiate with the IMF. We might have to go back and find other means.
Because I was going to ask, are we in a position to be calling the shots, really?
Are we? Have we ever been? If you go to the bank and you take a loan, your hands, your fingers, your everything is in the mouth of the bank.
Including those of your other family.
Exactly. Members. And if it so happens that you cannot pay that loan back, what does the bank do?
They come after you.
Exactly. They come after you. So let's look at it and look at it very critically. We've taken, you narrated a number of bonds that we've taken over the duration of time. Some are getting matured, some are yet to be mature, some are into the 2030s.
Right.
And our children and children's children would have to come and pay it. Do we have, even if we're going to take it from taxes, do we have the capacity
in terms of making sure that the economy is strong enough to hold the shocks? A strong economy holds shocks. Do we have a strong economy today? And what has caused us that weak economy we have had? Yes, we talk about a drop in some of the our primary commodity prices and all these things. But these commodity prices we talk about, and these two parties have been in power all this while. What have they done? I come back to that same question. What have they done to add value to these things? So let's take gold today. If the price of gold drops, does the price of gold drop with added value gold? Does it drop? It doesn't. It's even a much better market. You go to Saudi and all they do is gold. Do they mine gold there? No. Where do they get their gold from? From countries like Ghana. So if we are not looking at being able to strengthen the economy, the domestic debt that we have, that we are trying to make sure that we are able to pay off, is just going to escalate, and the interest of it is going to go up. Because listen, before any finance minister, if he has a pot of money, the first thing he would do is to satisfy debt, than to satisfy investment.
Especially one from the international financial market, which involves private entities, not the bilaterals or multilaterals. They'll come after you.
So it's a question of being able to grow the economy. It all boils down to the economy. And if you are not growing the economy, you go out for debt. How do you play with situations like we find ourselves in today?
Great.
Now, the finance minister is coming back. He's going to come and tell us where the sinking fund is, where we're going to get the money. But we have to be very careful. Yes, we are hoping that the 10 project will come into being very soon. We are hoping that with the 10 project, because of the huge deposits of gas, we'll be able to sustain electricity. We are hoping that the 30 contracts that government has signed, where oil and gas is concerned, will come into fruition, exploration and production will start. So come 2020, 2030, or 2020, 2024, we'll have more companies producing oil and gas, but it also depends on the benchmark revenue that the government chooses. And if that benchmark revenue is way out of the price of oil, we would still find ourselves not being able to satisfy our domestic debt.
Right. Mr. Dongo, so the 5th Eurobond has been suspended. There are no clear indications as to whether we'll go back there or not. In terms of sourcing funds, we are quite in a fix there. In January 2017, the first Eurobond is maturing. We need to pay up. Funds. Getting funds is problematic. And let me just quickly refer you to the ministers, the finance minister, when he was presenting the review of the budget in the supplementary budget, indeed acknowledged that we are not meeting our revenue targets. How are we going to get money to deal with our debt obligations?
Yes, I think first we need to situate this discussion within the context of the normal practice in raising funding on the international market. A roadshow is basically to try and explain to investors what you want, how you want to use that money, and what mechanisms are in place to be able to pay them when they finally mature. And it is to exhibit the prospects within the short, medium to long term of your economy to be able to repay those monies. And normally market conditions change, and sometimes do change very fast. And so over the years, I'm yet to see a Eurobond between 2013 and now that immediately after the roadshow were able to float. In 2013, when the first roadshow was done and market conditions were not favorable, it was postponed. It was postponed twice before government then found an appropriate conditions and then floated it. In 2014, a similar exercise happened. It was postponed 3 times. In fact, last year, just last year, the Eurobond was postponed twice. All because you want to read the mood of the market. You want to find the appropriate timing in order
so in other words, we are likely to go back.
So if now government feels that as at the time they did the roadshow, just like it happened in the past, the market conditions are not appropriate, and therefore government wants to wait to see how market conditions will improve in order to float, I cannot see how that is a seal of disapproval of the management of the government.
Great, but on that, timing was a problem.
Yes, I want to come to a number of other issues for us to properly understand.
If we're looking at market conditions and everything else that would be perhaps the investors would be looking out for, why did we have to do that? Because people have reported, and the take on there is that at a time where you are having issues with IMF, for instance, you know, which also raises issues about credibility, because one of the reasons why we went to IMF, or the gains we were going to get from IMF, was credibility. So that investors would be like, okay, yes, if IMF is supporting them, then yes, we could actually also go there. But where you have IMF actually raising issues and you have issues to iron out, at that time, was that the best of times to actually go look for?
You see, the IMF has milestones. At every review process, you have certain milestones to meet. At the third review, some of the milestones that had to be met had to do with some enabling legislation that were pending in Parliament. And they were just passed before Parliament rose. So one, the Bank of Ghana Amendment Act was a requirement. Two, the new Public Financial Management Act were a requirement. So because these had not been passed by Parliament, they could not present their review to the board for approval. Okay, it is not because Ghana has missed key indicators in the review. In fact, as a matter of fact, the World Bank, the IMF agrees that Ghana had met almost all the requirements except these two key legislation.
But when you're looking at a zero financing by the central bank, and you have the act being amended to say 5%, it's a reduction from 10, but it's still 5, which clearly shows that there is a likelihood that you may resort to the central bank for support.
If you allow me, I want to build from a certain perspective. There is a huge chunk of misinformation that is out there, and that is informing this debate. In the first place, some have said, because the economy has been mismanaged, that's why the investor community is not willing to invest in our bonds. Do the facts support that? And I say no. In 2015, investors in the international community were willing to buy our bonds. Okay, what was the economic indicators in 2015 that encouraged them to invest, and the economic indicators of 2016 that is discouraging them? Has it deteriorated?
Well, not really, but the interest rates, for instance, is an issue.
So one, the GDP at the time was 3.9, and investors were comfortable. Today it is 4.9. Are you saying that investors are not comfortable with an economy that is growing at 4.9, but were comfortable to invest in an economy that was growing at 3.9? Two.
You should have been growing more.
But we're looking at the interest rates, Mr. Adongo. See the interest rates from 8.25 to 10.75.
No, that is a different matter. Pricing is a different issue. You study the market in order to find the appropriate time so you can price properly. But I'm saying that the debate is whether or not the international community is not comfortable with the management of the economy. And I'm saying that the indicators do not support that. The other issue is that as at last year, around this time, the cedi had depreciated by some 17%. Today, it's depreciated by 0.02%, less than half a percentage. And you're saying investors were comfortable with the depreciation of 17%, but are not comfortable with 0.2%. Inflation at the time was 18.7%, and investors were comfortable. Today, it is 16.3%. They are not comfortable with a lower inflation. At the time, the budget deficit was how much? It was somewhere around 6.7%. Investors were comfortable with that. Today, we are dealing with 6.3, moving towards 5%, and investors are not comfortable. So I'm saying that it has everything to do with timing than the management of the economy. That is all I'm trying to, because the economic indicators that influence their decision to invest in the 2015 Eurobond have significantly improved now. And therefore, if it was purely based on the confidence of the Ghanaian economy, you would have to see them rush to invest. But it is the timing of that particular flotation, and not because the economy has been mismanaged. The other,
very well. Let me move on to the west side. So yes, Nana.
Where the proper bombers are.
The fifth Eurobond we suspended. Are we likely to go back or not? And if not, how do we take care of our revenue inflows and our debt obligations?
Again, this is not one of my best grades. I'm not
Your teacher was absent from class a long time.
No, sure. I wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
But I think what's crucial, ultimately, is that it's quite embarrassing that we've been put in this situation. That's the political reality, economic reality. Is it a matter of timing? Yeah, why not? Which investor wouldn't consider time as a factor? An economy that was growing at 8-point-something% grows at 4-point-something-3%, and you get investment because they might hope that things will change, and there's no evidence of that. Yeah, you could put up an argument for timing, but was that the case? We should be interested in exactly what is causing it. Why is it that in an election year we can't raise the money? Is it maybe a history of looking at an election year where you overspend by some 600 million, and up to now we still don't understand what that was for, and people don't feel like they should do the proper accounting to the people for that? So investors will not be interested in you. Fundamentally, we have a weak economy. You raised this matter, which is, like I said, because I've been paying attention in class, I didn't know, and thanks for the information. If payment is due soon, do we look like we'll be able to pay? Therefore, timing. Should I go for this one? Will they be ready to pay when it's time? That's what people would look for. So I think for me, it's very embarrassing that we're in the situation we're in. We're not telling ourselves the truth about our failings. We cannot say that when we're growing at 4-point-something, when we could be growing at 8-point-something, and we've done it before, we should be pounding our chests. When the economy is not stable, when the Ghanaian is not benefiting from things that it would boost his or her thinking and her energies to produce more and everything, things like the fact that oil prices have dropped, and so we should reflect in our fuel prices. The fact that we have a serious energy problem, and nobody is telling us the truth, from the president down to his quote-unquote lowest political in charge, be it a deputy minister or whoever. Nobody is telling us the truth. When somebody finds the truth and tells us, then insults are rained on the person. People like Dr. Baumia. So the reality is that that investor who really and truly cares about his or her money and doesn't, it's not your politics or your political orientation that interests him or her, but the investment they're making, they expect a return on it. When they weigh all the factors that, or indicators that give them an idea of what to do, timing is a part. And the timing is to do with who's in charge and how they are dealing with issues.
But Mr. Dongo is raising the point here that, I mean, times when relatively, perhaps you could say, conditions were not as good as now, we still had investors buying.
And I'm saying, if the same investor will look at those very factors and look deeper than Mr. Dongo is interested in letting us see. For example, that growth that you claim, how real is it? 3-point-something to 4-point-something.
250 million of that money already through the sinking fund.
Like I was saying, that growth, how real is it? Over the next 3-5 years, if we stick to this type of economic management, is there hope? That investor will look. Or you think they just look at, oh, 3 is going to 4. No. They'll look beyond that. What were the other things you were raising? Inflation. What if it's pretentious? You inject money or whatever it is that will tone inflation down for a little bit. It drops to 2%. When you get your bragging, inflation is gone to 9%, now it's 8, it gets to 18%. And you want somebody to take you serious. What are the factors that have led us there? You don't tell us the truth about what you are doing. And then when the money comes, you turn it into the wrong places. And so it's not encouraging the manufacturers we were talking about earlier to produce more. It's not encouraging people to do things that will let our economy grow. They have to literally hand to mouth if the distance is even close enough. That's how bad things are. And so this is the cost. It is a real cost. The truth is that there's a failing in the management of our economy that has led us to this point. When somebody, what was the percentage?
Please wrap up so I move to...
Very well. No. What was the percentage the last time that we were offered at? And even that one we complained.
10.75.
Now it's being offered. When somebody comes here and it gets 10%, now it's 16%. It's like the...
but that 16% is coming from...
16%.
For the 5th Eurobond.
This one that they went to. That's the offer.
But is that confirmed?
That was what was being offered.
It was 11.
That was what was being offered. Now,
whatever it is was more
so
than
my
10%.
wrap up on that.
Nana, please, I need to move on to
10 to 16%. It's like how they dropped from 80%
Doc, we are running
to 75%.
out of time.
They
Doc,
think it's all right.
your take on this, the 5th Eurobond,
very
funding constraint and all.
I think I don't have that much to say, but very quickly, if you look at the topic that is being put to us, Ghana's Eurobond fiasco, what does it mean to our economy? And when you say something is a fiasco, it means that it's a blunder. I mean, there's something that is not right.
That's somebody's opinion.
Yeah, that's the caption though. But when I listen,
justified
That's the opinion of the
no, but that's the
so,
caption.
yes.
Yeah, that's the caption. So it means a judgment is being passed that there was a fiasco or there's a blunder. But when I listen to my colleagues, especially to Mr. Isaac, he gives instances to more or less to diffuse that position that is being held. And to a reasonable extent, if the facts and the data that is being provided are accurate, I tend to agree with him. Because he started from 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. But you see, Abana, there's an interesting dynamic when it comes to this issue. It's important to note that this Eurobond that we are trying to raise is a Eurobond that we are raising to pay off a debt. Another Eurobond, 2007. We are raising Eurobond to pay off a Eurobond. So if I owe, if the Eurobond fall apart, I owe this man, I can't pay him. I go to you, borrow, can pay him. I mean, it's telling, and it's worrying. It's worrying in the sense that normally you borrow to develop, and based on that amount that is borrowed and what is used for, you pay off that loan based on what is accrued out of it. So if we are borrowing again to more or less to pay off a debt, then it's an indictment on us.
And an investor will not make
Let me land
yes.
very quick. And listening to my honorable brother again, he gives a chronology of 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. It looks like Ghana will be becoming addictive to what? To
And
borrowing.
with each one, there's an increase.
I mean, we are becoming
rate,
addicted to borrowing, and I think that is unfortunate, and I think that needs to be stopped.
Great.
We
All
can't-
right.
we
Cool.
can't-
So
billions
we'll be moving on to.
borrow.
I think we have just under 8 minutes to touch on some
keep
issues.
it
So
all to the west.
let's. I'll start from you, sir. Briefly, like a second.
Yeah, briefly. Yes.
A second, and then we go on.
I think we need to understand that when a government borrows, it is not for the fun of it. We have a budget. The budget that is approved by Parliament has a deficit component. And so going to borrow is an operationalization of financing that deficit in the budget. It is not as if beyond the budget deficit, you are borrowing money for something else. And so that has to be understood, that as long as Ghana runs budget deficit, they need to borrow in order to finance
Let him run, please.
Mention when we ever ran a balanced budget in Ghana.
No, that's fine. I mean, yes, we're yet to get that.
to pay debts.
That's fine. Yes.
Ask them what they use that money for.
Pay debt.
They use the $750 million for.
Yes, that's what you argue.
What do you continue for?
We are moving on to CDD reports. The survey reports.
For the $750 million
Embarrassing.
Gentlemen, we have just about 6 minutes to go, so please briefly touch on this and then we go. The CDD survey reports, which is looking at popular opinions on issues at stake in the 2016 elections, and among other things, it's talking about the fact that 7 out of 10 Ghanaians seem to be believe that the country is heading in the wrong direction. Also, Ghanaians, half of the people, or more than half, are of the view that the president and members of parliament have performed well on their jobs. So that was a split. But for the heading in the wrong direction, you had 70% thinking that way. Briefly, what our take is on this. Okay, no, I'm starting with the West, yes. Yes, please.
Well, I mean,
briefly, let's touch and go. And then look at it within the bigger context of polls as well.
Very quickly, I think this is an empirical study. And when it comes to empirical study for us, there are so many things that we look out for. One, you look at the objectivity of the study. Two, you look at who is conducting the study. Three, you look at the instrument. And I don't want to look at all of them. Let me just touch on one or two things. The instrument that was being used here was interview.
Face-to-face, I think.
Face-to-face interview for 2,400 participants or respondents within a period of 2 weeks. Abna, the research was administered between July 2nd to July 18th, 16 days.
Yes.
The question that I asked, who conducted the interview for the 2,400 people? Where were they conducted? For how long? And most importantly and most informant, when you conduct an interview, it's a qualitative study. What it means is that the responses by the respondents are normally given out in oral, in written form. So, ask Adongo, what is your perspective about this? What Adongo says is brought out. But here, the data that is being provided is quantitative data. We are talking about percentages. Percentages in terms of looking at certain variables. You understand? So, I think there's a little bit of a problem there. That said, look, if you ask me as a Ghanaian historically, I have not believed in polls. Because polls in this country have not been that objective. You understand? Somebody will always
You think
say,
they've not been objective?
No. In terms of political polling, I mean, look at the history of polling in this country. They've not been very objective, and legitimately so, because in terms of even the sampling, in terms of the understanding of the respondents regarding what they've been asked, it's a little bit problematic.
Great, Doc, let me move on to Mr. Dongo.
Yes, I think for us in NDC, what this only does is to motivate us to work a lot harder. Because it is a reason MPP has always won polls and we have won elections. They are very comfortable with biased polls. And I can tell you, when you look at the sampling, okay, if you put the three northern regions together, Upper East, 2.4% of the people that were interviewed. Upper West, Upper East, I think 4.1%. If we put the whole of the three northern regions together, plus Volta region, the respondents were less than just around 10% of the total people interviewed. Whilst Ashanti region alone constitute 19% of the people who were interviewed.
So raising issues about
Eastern region.
Methodology.
Eastern region, 10%. In fact, Eastern region alone put together is equivalent to the three northern regions plus Volta region put together in terms of sampling. And we know that MPP has been winning their elections in two regions, and that's Eastern and East and Ashanti. And so this is the kind of research we are dealing with. But nevertheless, we are motivated by that conclusion to work a lot harder. But I'm saying that CDD should not be losing their credibility with this type of
so you're raising issues about
if you want to do it properly, the northern region alone is about 30%. Okay, you add Volta region and you're giving them less than 10%, and only Ashanti 19%. Eastern region alone 10%, and based on that, these two regions are taking a decision that is generalized for the decision of the whole country. I think they must come again.
Very well, Mr. Gentle.
The survey was conducted from a sample size of 2,400 adults. Now, that 2,400 adults, is it a good representation of Ghanaians? The Ghanaian views?
It's a sample.
Look, I know it's a sample, but is it a good sample to take from? Look, we are all aware that there are certain things that this government in power hasn't been able to achieve. Very much aware of that. That the ordinary man cannot afford 3 square meals a day. The basics of which an ordinary man can use to live is not there. And so far as I'm concerned, polls have always got it wrong. Look at the United Kingdom. It will tell you, mine is on the day. If something changes, some material thing in our economy changes, it can shift the elections on the day to one side. So I don't go with polls. Yes.
So why do we continue doing them anyway?
Yes, well, they need to satisfy the people who sponsor them that they are doing their work. So for me, that is neither here nor there. The other thing it does is that at least it informs the general public as to, if they are not too sure of where the state is or where we are, it gives some kind of information. But when it comes to the
credibility about the thing, is why should the public even pay attention?
Well, CDD is a credible institution, and so we take that whatever they are doing is credible enough. Whether it is true, whether it would influence the elections, is another thing.
Great.
Mine is on the day.
Sure. Just a minute.
I ended up with a minute, huh? One, we should stop belittling polls and encourage people to tell us the truth. It is one of the best ways of being able to tell what the public wants, especially if you want to be, you want to serve the people. So stop belittling polls.
Yeah, but the polls too might have their own slant on it.
You see, but you see, it is up to you. For example, if the sample, if you cannot go around 25 million
it seems to be in the favor of the opposition.
That's a very sad question you've asked me. I'm saying, first of all of us should appreciate what polls do. How can that be in my favor? When you do that, it allows you to let the Joe public tell you, the person who wants to serve them in one way or the other, what they want. So when you now tell them that these things are not, when they see somebody polling them, they will tell them a lie. So let us build a positive image about polling. 1. 2, therefore let us want people to tell us the truth about how things are going on. One of the ways you do it is to pose the same question in different ways. And then it's up to you, the analyst, to glean out the truth. Is it true that the public thinks that the president is doing well? The presentation says he's got some 40-something% rating, which is higher than the nose. Yeah, so he's doing well, by 40-something%. Do they think the MPs are doing well? By the same 40-something% or so, they think so. How do people feel about Ghana and how things? 70-something%. It's the same question asked in different ways. When you go and talk about the president, Ghanaians are afraid to attack their leadership openly. It is a matter of fact. So let's deal with that truth. So they tell you things to make you feel good. Now when you ask them a very general question that they can deal with directly, they tell you their truth. The truth is that things are not going well.
We need to
and so that is what is there.
Yes. So this is all the time we have for today's discussions. Thank you so much for making a date with us. And thanks to the panel, Dr. Ahmed Jinapor, Nana Fedwa Jemano Foyata, Mr. Kwame Jantua, and Mr. Isaac Adongo. Do have yourselves a very good weekend and a productive week. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.